a controversial dish called coddle, why the pub is one of the best places to eat, and the importance of being humble in Ireland. This week, we're in Dublin.
Traveling the world to bring you delicious dishes, tasty beverages, and interesting experiences. This is the Destination Eat Drink podcast on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Welcome to Destination Eat Drink, the travel podcast for foodies. I'm Brent Peterson, and Destination Eat Drink is the place for foodies who like to travel and travelers who love to eat. And this week, we're in Dublin for amazing food like boxty and a whiskey tour with Granne Lawlor of Flavour Trails. But first, take a minute, rate and review the Destination Eat Drink podcast. It just takes a minute, and your 5-star review helps other foodie travelers find the show. Thank you so much for that. And if you really love food and travel, I've got my foodie travel guides available at buymeacoffee.com/destinationeatdrink. All the best things to eat and drink, cool local dishes, and fun things to do in places like Seville and Porto and Milan, as well as smaller cities like Cadiz in Spain, Évora in Portugal. They're a great companion to your trip. Granne Lawlor is the founder of Flavour Trails, a food and whiskey tour company in Dublin. Grainne tells me about Irish whiskey and what makes it unique, as well as how to pair food with the spirit, why the Irish traditionally don't eat a lot of seafood, and how the Brazilian community has enriched the culture of Dublin. Plus, how you earn it in an Irish pub. Okay, I'm starving, so let's eat.
Destination Eat Drink.
Granne Lawlor from Flavour Trails and flavortrails.ie. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink. Looking forward to talking to you about Dublin today.
Yeah, it's brilliant to be on. Thanks so much for having me.
So let's start from the beginning. Are you an original Dubliner? Were you born in Dublin and raised in Dublin, or you came from somewhere else?
Controversially, no, I'm not from Dublin. I do love Dublin. And when you're not from Dublin, you're not supposed to say that.
Oh.
So don't tell the Dubliners.
Okay.
I'm giving it any compliments. You're either from Dublin or from the country in Ireland. And I'm definitely from outside of Dublin. I was born down in Wexford, which is in the southeast of Ireland, in a little town called Enniscorthy. And we moved up towards Dublin when I was going to school. So we live out in County Kildare, which is a neighbouring county of Dublin, really close. So I get all the magic of being, close enough to the countryside in a small village, but I'm 30 minutes from the city centre. So I get the best of both worlds, which I really appreciate,
You're painting an idyllic picture that I think a lot of North Americans, when they envision Ireland, they think of this bucolic countryside like that. Is that what it's like, a little green village?
I will say that our village has grown. It has a large population, but it has kept that little main street feel. We have the largest Palladian style Georgian mansion in the country here. So we've loads of green land around it. And Kildare is also the equestrian capital of Ireland. So the Celts in Ireland were horse people, and we can trace all thoroughbreds back to 3 horses. And we have a national stud here in Kildare. So although my little village has quite a big population, we do have that small little village feel. And like literally you drive a couple of minutes outside of the village, you're in these gorgeous grasslands. We're close to the Curragh, which is the oldest grasslands in Europe. They've been untouched for 5,000 years. So yes, is the answer. I think we underappreciate it when North Americans fly into Dublin. They fly over this area and they're looking at that patchwork of green fields, that thing that they're imagining. And even before they touch down, they get to see that, yeah, it's real.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm based in Portugal now, and I love talking to folks who are, my age or maybe even a little bit younger sometimes, about what Portugal was like when they were growing up, because it's so incredibly different. I mean, Portugal has only been an independent democracy for 50 years now. Mm-hmm. And I have to imagine in Ireland, the changes that you guys have gone through over the years. Give me a little idea of what it was like for you growing up in Ireland in the southeast of the country, Grainne.
I was born in the 70s, so I lived through the 80s when there was more Irish people born in Ireland living in London than were living in Ireland. Like everyone left this country, and it was a very, very different place to where it is now. So poverty was widespread, unemployment was widespread. It was pretty gloomy, to be honest. I left school in the 90s and things were beginning to change. We joined the EU in the 70s, but the infrastructure that the EU brought to Ireland really only we see the fruition of that towards the end of the 90s. There's investment coming into Ireland. We get free education, which was, I think, the major turning stone here. We went from being one of the most uneducated people in Ireland or in Europe to some of the most educated people in Europe. So it became a very attractive place. And I've traveled a lot. I've lived abroad, and from coming back and forth, I think that change is really stark. It's massive. And the big joy, I think, has been that now instead of people leaving, people are moving here. So we're getting this amazing influence from all over Europe, from South America, from all over the world. And it has only done us good. You know, as an island nation, you're pretty much related to everybody. So mixing the gene pool up is a good start, you know. And as the Brazilians and Argentinians move in, I think, wow, we're going to be good looking in a couple of generations. This is amazing.
Oh man, I could talk about the Brazilians all day long. Some of my favorite people are Brazilians who live in our city, and I always say my word about the Brazilians, my phrase about the Brazilians is, if you want to find a party, find a Brazilian, because they will take you to a party. They always do.
Well, it's a good mix with the Irish, I can tell you. You know, Dublin city centre sometimes, Brazilians are brilliant, big smiley faces. The Irish are the same. We love a party. We love a good time. It's really important to us. So it's been a lovely mix. I mean, we had, I suppose, when you go back to the early 2000s, it was a lot of people from Eastern Europe, from Russia, from Ukraine, from Lithuania, Latvia moving here. And they've settled in really well. During that construction boom, a lot of those guys were moving here. I think the Brazilians moved a lot, a top guy, as far as I remember, in the Irish meat industry gets a top job in Brazil, and basically encourages Brazilians to move here with their expertise around meat and beef. And they moved largely west to begin, and they had a big influence by then bringing their sisters, their wives, their girlfriends. They came over and worked in the healthcare industry. They've been a massive boost to that industry as well. And now we've pretty favourable language school visas. So they move here to learn English, but they can work as well. So they get to practice English, and we get the benefit of them working in our really under-resourced hospitality industry. So for me, it's a win-win, you know?
I can't wait to see a few years or decades down the road as to how the Brazilian music integrates with Irish music, because these are two cultures that are known for their amazing music. Somehow salsa and trad is going to mix together somewhere, somehow, into a real cool amalgamation of music and dance that is going to be amazing. But let's talk about the food. Has Brazilian food, you talked about the meat. I imagine these meat places have opened up, but anything else that is interesting as far as Brazilian food goes? I love feijoada here in Portugal, the bean stew. What are you guys seeing?
I think it's largely, for the Irish community, the big focus is on meat for sure, because we are so proud of our beef. Beef is our largest export. It's grass-fed, one of the best exports out of Europe. We're really, really proud of it. And I don't think Irish people have been allowed to be proud of a lot of things for a lot of times under colonization. I think that happens to a people. You lose your confidence, but we certainly have it around the beef and the dairy. And I think that the cooking styles coming from Brazil, coming from Argentina, coming from mainland Europe has really given us the confidence to showcase what we feel we do best. So I think it's for Irish people, it's the influence is the biggest thing of how to cook it, why you would cook it different ways. But we're certainly seeing amazing Brazilian restaurants. And I think I might be wrong in this, but I do think that during the 2000s, Irish people went a bit mad. We all, it's the first time in our history that money came into the country, and we loved it. And I'm not ashamed to say we went mental. And we sort of, I think we overstretched ourselves a bit when it came to, um, rather than take influence, we were almost trying to emulate. And what we learned through that was to let other nations do what they do best, take influence from it, and we stick to what we do. So very often you'll go, there's amazing Brazilian restaurants, Italian, Chinese, all everything you expect in any major city. But there's a little bit of us, let them do what they do. Let's go and enjoy it on their patch. And they come to us for what we do. So I think it's more of an osmosis thing. Give us confidence and enjoy it then where it's supposed to be enjoyed.
There's this idea of transplanted cuisine that dishes, ingredients travel to new places, usually with immigrants. And what happens is eventually they start mixing and intermingling. What you're saying is interesting, Grainne, because this is like, okay, the Brazilians, that's its own thing. The Irish dishes, that will be its own thing. And ne'er the two shall meet. Do you think that's a fair characterization?
I think there's a healthy dose of that. Of course, there's fusion going on. And I do think we're very early in the journey. I think that's the other part of it, that we're still very, very early in the journey. And I think it will happen, and it's exciting, to think that it will. And of course, there's stuff going on, especially down in West Cork and Cork. Cork is known as the culinary capital of Ireland, and what's known as the food revolution really begins down there with a woman called Myrtle Allen. She's part of this dynasty of women who run a cookery school down in Ballymaloe in Cork, and she's sort of known as the kind of the godmother of Irish food. So there's a lot of fusion, I think, happening in those pockets, but I do think there's still a bit of let the Lebanese do what they do, let the Greeks do what they do, and let us perfect and get confidence what we do first, and then move out of that. I think, do you know where you really see it is in produce? Like cheese, I think, is a great example. So there's a German cheesemaker here called Silke. She lives up in County Cavan, and she has a brand called Corleggy cheese. And she's had this massive impact. Like when I was growing up, you could get red or white cheddar, and it was the best red and white cheddar in the world, but that was pretty much what you could get. She moves here for the dairy, and suddenly, sheep's milk, goat's milk, as well as cow's milk cheese is back on the menu. And we're even producing buffalo mozzarella now down in Cork. We've imported buffalo from Italy, and there's a couple of great producers down in Cork. And those cheeses are winning multiple gold medals every year. And it has definitely been the confidence that we've taken from Europeans who move here for the standard of the dairy. And they bring with them their great heritage, and we learn from that. So that's, I think, at the moment it's in the produce, but I do think it will happen. Of course it'll happen.
That's fascinating about importing the buffaloes to Ireland to make the buffalo mozzarella, because the dairy is already so good, such a high quality in Ireland. And I have to imagine that with all the grass feeding that's going on there, the quality of the milk coming out of those buffalo must be outstanding. Oh, my mouth is watering thinking about some Irish buffalo mozzarella.
Yeah, absolutely. Check out Macroom buffalo mozzarella. It's huge, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about some Irish dishes. Would you say that there's a signature dish of Dublin? Like when I come to Dublin, this is the one thing that you have to try?
Absolutely. Very controversial dish. Again, every time I mention Dublin, I said the word controversial. But as a country girl, I would never have been even allowed to talk about this dish. It's called coddle. So country people see this dish as a bit of sacrilege. It's a pork stew. So we've three different types of stew really we're known for in Ireland. So there's obviously the Irish stew, which is lamb, and then beef and stout or beef and Guinness stew is massive. And then there's this pork stew from Dublin. So pork is known as a city dish really, or a meat that comes from the city in Britain and Ireland. So traditionally, they would have built little houses in the cities called two up and two down. And out the back of these little houses were really long, narrow back gardens. And something called lairage happened in the back garden. So in the first layer was for recreation, the second layer was for growing vegetables, and in the third layer you could raise a little pig or a chicken in the city. So when you fell on hard times, you could butcher the animal, you sold the good ends of meat to make money for the family, and then you kept the poor ends of meat at home. So way back, coddle was like boiled tripe, and country people just thought this was absolute sacrilege. Nowadays, coddle is like an Irish breakfast in a stew. It's all those really good ends of pork. You'll find sausages, rashers, bacon, often thickened with potato. And if people are visiting Dublin, two great places, probably the most famous place to try a coddle is beside my favorite tourist attraction in Dublin, which is called Glasnevin Cemetery. There's 1.5 million people buried there. So it's the history of Dublin through people, and Dublin is all about the people. And next door is a little pub called the Gravediggers. And you have to go into the old part of the pub, not the new part. And they are really, really famous for their coddle. Or another great place would be Gallagher's Boxty House, which is in Temple Bar, which is our tourist district. But this is a family-run restaurant. Porrico Gallagher has been there for I want to say 35, 40 years. And they do a great coddle and boxty as well. So if you're in the city centre, it's another great place to try it. It's not hugely popular outside of people's homes. So finding it in pubs or restaurants is a real little treat.
You bring up a couple of things here. First of all, what was the bar called? Is it Gravediggers? Is that it?
Yeah,
Gravediggers.
Yeah.
I've heard of that place, but I've never been there when I've been to Dublin, and I've always meant to go, and I never have. I gotta put that on the list. But
put it on the top of your list, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. But you bring up this boxty, which is like a potato pancake kind of. Talk about this dish because it's also very famous in Ireland.
It absolutely is. It's actually more famous over near the west in Leitrim and Sligo. It very much originates over there. And actually, Pádraig Óg, who owns Boxty, is from Leitrim. So he's brought Boxty to Dublin, really. His restaurant, his big focus is on potatoes. And we do love a potato in Ireland. Like we literally don't trust a plate that doesn't have a potato on it.
Right.
So Boxty really, he's the one who taught me about Boxty. I actually had never heard of it until I came to Dublin and then realized it wasn't even from Dublin. So you get leftover mashed potatoes. Usually the next day, they're nice and cold. And then you get raw potato, which you grate really finely, and you put it into a clean cloth, and then you squeeze all the liquid out. And then you add the two together. You mix the raw and the mashed potato together. You make a batter, and then you make a pancake. And it's delicious. They make them both savoury and sweet in Boxty, and they've lots of different fillings in there. I actually... Temple Bar gets a bad rap, you know. I think that there are some really great things in Temple Bar that shouldn't be missed, and Boxty is definitely one of those things. That restaurant, if you're looking for really good traditional, honest foods, and they actually have their own brewery as well. So we don't do a lot of craft beer in Ireland. Why? We like Guinness, right? So craft beer can be a difficult thing to get your hands on. And there's actually two great craft beer locations in Temple Bar. And one of them is definitely Boxty.
I've been to Boxty. I love it. I love having a Boxty. I guess maybe it was too early for a beer when I went there. I didn't realize they had a brewery there, but
yeah,
I'm going to have to try that.
Yeah, it's run by his son, Jack. Jack is one of the nicest guys on the planet. So Jack got his degree a couple of years ago, and now he's moved into the restaurant, and he's really looking after the brewery. Their stout is stunning. It's a gorgeous chocolatey stout, but their tasting tray, you should absolutely do the flight. It's wonderful.
On my list. Oh, you're making my list longer and longer.
Good.
as we talk. Yeah, absolutely. And what about Irish stew? I remember the first time I went to Dublin, we went to a pub called O'Donoghue's, which is an amazing I love that place. Oh, so good.
Yeah.
a picture of picture of the guy from Thin Lizzy on the wall having a beer,
Yeah.
and all kinds of famous people have played there. But my one of the people we were with got an Irish stew in O'Donoghue's and said it was great. And
Mm.
it's not the first place you would think to have really good quality food, some little pub, but I guess you can get really good Irish stew there. What's your opinion?
Yeah, look, I think the pub is one of the most affordable ways to eat. Really good, what we consider traditional food. The standard of pub food has gone through the roof. So, first to say about Irish stew, it's always lamb, and people sort of we all know about Welsh lamb and New Zealand lamb. Irish lamb is right up there. A number of years ago, we all know wool prices globally went through the floor. So Irish farmers started to focus on meat, and they started to breed Welsh and Irish breeds together to produce some of the best meat on the planet. And we're always looking out for lamb raised in Wicklow or in County Mayo. So all food in Ireland is 100% traceable. So every pub and restaurant in Ireland can tell you who caught the fish, who fed the cows, who picked the potatoes. So the standard of food in somewhere like a pub is uniform with a fine dining restaurant, because I mean the standard of produce, I should say, because we know where it's all coming from. So something like an Irish stew, if you get it from an hour outside Dublin in County Wicklow, in that clear broth, thickened with barley, we've the perfect climate in Ireland for root vegetables. So amazing sweet root vegetables, usually those little waxy potatoes in there. Like, I'm a little bit prejudiced about waxy potatoes because where I'm from in Wexford, we grow those big balls of flour, and that's what we're always looking for. So, like, literally the only place I want to see waxy potatoes in an Irish stew to soak up all that lovely juice in there. So somewhere like a pub, um, especially places like O'Donoghue's, absolutely really good pub grub, we call it, but it kind of doesn't give it it doesn't justify actually how good it can be.
We've talked a lot about traditional Irish dishes, Irish stew and boxty and whatnot. Is there a movement of new Irish cuisine? Is there people who are doing new and interesting things? There must be. Irish chefs are renowned. What kind of stuff is happening?
I think where you're seeing it's sort of in the fine dining end of things. I suppose again, it's probably not as uniform as it is in other countries, in that we're still gaining our confidence. But say, like, for me, it's really interesting when you see things like seafood. We're an island; it's automatically presumed that we're big fish eaters in Ireland, and I get it on tour a lot when I'm out on my food tour. A lot of people say to me, my God, the Irish must really love potatoes. If when the blight happened, they didn't want to eat anything else, they'd rather die than eat anything else. And people are really serious about that. And I kind of look at them like going, wow, okay. So the Irish didn't have access to the land. They weren't allowed to have fishing licenses or hold hunting licenses. So actually under colonization, if you took a trait or salmon from the river, you could be transported to Australia for penal servitude. And young children were taken from their families and transported to Australia. So under colonization, we didn't have access to food sources. So things like fish that you would expect would be a major part of our diet really wasn't for a very long time. And then when we joined the EU, part of the deal was that we had to open our fishing waters. And so fish caught in Irish waters became very expensive. So something that you're not eating a lot of, and now becomes very expensive. It's not encouraging you to add it to your diet. So it's really, I think, especially for those of us not living in coastal towns or villages, fish really wasn't something on our diet. So it's remarkable when you think about that somewhere like Seoul, which is on South William Street, won the number one fine dining seafood restaurant in the world before Christmas. So for me, it's really about Irish people being reintroduced to what we do really well here, which is fish and seafood, experimenting with the dairy. And again, we are being exposed to all of these ideas through amazing restaurants. Like down in Cork, there's an amazing Palestinian restaurant called Is. They are phenomenal. And social media, I think, as well. We're beginning to get eyes on what food looks like when it's prepared differently. So I still think we're on the journey. It's absolutely happening, but it's definitely, I think, in the fine dining end of things where it's going. Like I'm going to chapter one now in a couple of weeks, which is I think 2 stars. And again, like that, this is a relatively new thing for us. The idea of having more than 4 or 5 Michelin star restaurants. Like we've so many of them now. And I do think that that's where we're seeing the innovation in the European standard. I think here other European countries mightn't consider it innovation, but we're really just rediscovering how good our produce is, if that makes sense.
It's really interesting. And I think that also goes to the Irish psyche. When you've been colonized and subjugated for so long, it can't help but affect your attitude towards things. And I think you're describing exactly what's going on there. Oh, we don't, almost, and correct me if I'm wrong, Grainne, but almost, oh, we don't deserve to have this really, really nice thing. And of course, the Irish people do. If anyone deserves it, it's the people who are there, the Irish people who have been persecuted for so long.
I also think that the general Irish attitude is to be humble. It's
Okay.
really important to us. So, like, famous people love hanging out in Ireland and in Dublin because we will actively ignore you because we don't want you to think that you're something, and we want to bring you back down to earth with a little bit of a bang. So, being humble is really important. So, screaming and shouting about how good we are at things is not in our nature. It really isn't. So, getting these awards, number one, are a bit of a surprise. But before Christmas, the Irish Times named Kerrygold the number one butter in the world. And it is so funny on tour. And listen, the French are amazing. I love them. Their food is amazing. And we have great fun on tour. But it's really amazing that sometimes, when you mention dairy, it's like that has always been their forte. It's what they're famous for. They're so proud of it. But I'm always trying to explain to them, just because you're good at it doesn't mean we can't be good at it as well.
Right.
No one's trying to say, you're better. We do it differently, but it's really, really good. So I think a lot of confidence is building as these awards and international recognition comes in. But we also don't like to scream and shout about things like that, and I lived, especially from living in the States, I've lived in the States, and I think Americans are amazing. I really do, because of the confidence they have to talk about, what they're really good at. And we could really learn something from that, I think, here. So I do think there's an element of the confidence bit once we get our mouth around it as such and learn to talk about it in a way that we're comfortable with. I think it will, nobody ever came to Ireland for the weather or the food. Let me tell you, as Europe burns in the summer, everyone's looking at Ireland going, wow, the weather looks pretty good. And this weather produces a great standard of food. And for very good reason. We haven't been known for it for a long time, but now as we gain our confidence, it's becoming a really great food destination.
I'm smiling so wide listening to this description from you, Grainne, because all I can think of is, yeah, no one's accused the French or the Americans of being humble ever, But I'm here to say, because Kerrygold is available in the United States. I haven't seen it in Portugal. I don't think I've actively been looking for it, but I used to buy it in the States all the time. And man, it is amazing butter. I would actively go and get, if I couldn't find Kerrygold, I'd pretty much do without butter. I'd use olive oil instead, because it is such a good butter. So good. And it goes again to this thing that the quality of the dairy and the produce is so high in Ireland. But let's jump to something else. You guys do a whiskey tour. This must be hugely popular. Just give me an overview. What are we talking about when we do a whiskey tour with you, Grainne?
Yeah, so all of our tours, whether it's food, whiskey, storytelling, are 3 stops. We go for about 2.5 to 3 hours. The whiskey tour is probably my baby, I suppose. It's how I kind of got into food tourism was through the whiskey tours. So I've always had a real passion for Irish whiskey, and I've studied it really as a hobby for many years. And I'm delighted to say I'm eating and drinking for a living now, and it's definitely not a bad deal. But Ireland at the moment is the only producer of all three styles of whiskey in the world. So we produce the grains like the Americans, we produce the malts like the Scots, and then we produce our own style of whiskey, which is pot still whiskey. And on our tour, we really want to showcase those three styles and give people, whether they are complete beginners, novices, or have been drinking whiskey for a really long time, give it them some confidence about being able to tell the difference between the three styles in a really fun, relaxed way, visiting great whiskey bars in Dublin city centre. And it's just a really good, fun and informative tour. It's one of those things, you go, I'm really proud of this tour. I love it myself.
What is exactly, when we say Irish whiskey, it's a specific thing, but what is it exactly?
Yeah, so like I mean, the definition is it must be distilled on the island of Ireland and matured for a minimum of 3 years. And some say one day because we're so petty, we had to go one more than the Scots. But it must be a minimum of 40% alcohol. So we've got these rules around it and these laws around it. But then I suppose when people think about Irish whiskey, they're often comparing it to Scotch. And I suppose the major differences, and these are general rules, they're not hard rules, is that largely the Scots are known for single malts. We're largely known for single pot still. Although we produce really great single malt whiskey, like Bushmills, built in 1608, the oldest whiskey distillery in the world, like it produces single malt. So the Scots are known for malt, we're known for pot still. They're known for aggressive whiskey, and we mean this in a really positive way, and that comes from their largely double distillation, whereas we largely triple distill, which gives us a more smooth style of whiskey. And they're really well known for their peated whiskey. So when they're malting their barley, they use peat to dry it, and we get that lovely smoky flavour. Whereas we're better known for using coal or anthracite, so we don't get so much peated. Now, those two things cross over. We do some double distillation, we do some peated whiskey, but as general rules, that they're the major differences we're looking at. So with Irish whiskey, it's known for being oily. Like I like to say, we want to be able to chew our whiskey. We get this coating on our mouth, whereas Scotch or malt is known for being more dry on your palate, like a dry wine. So smooth Irish, aggressive Scotch, oily Irish, dry Scotch. So that's a general rule. Of course, there's caveats to that.
How would we be sampling whiskey? Is it just straight? Do you have it with a drop of water? Are there rules here?
Listen, my rule is you drink your whiskey how you like it. That's my rule. And my goal in life is to take the snobbery out of whiskey. But of course, within that, there are limits as to what flavour you're going to get out. Like you don't want to order a Middleton Very Rare and add Coke to it. That's what Jameson is absolutely perfect for. A little bit of ginger ale. So again, on the tour, I'll argue that I think Irish whiskey prefers water to ice. That's my opinion. So on tour, we play with water a little bit because what water does is separates oil from alcohol and allows the flavor to come through. So sometimes, again, like one of my rules is burn bad, heat good. So if you get a little bit of burn, add a drop of water. So we encourage people to play with the whiskey a little bit by using water, how to control doing that, how to prepare your palate so that, I don't know about you, Brent, but that when you're 18 and, you find a bottle of your parents' whiskey and, you have a drink and the shock of your life when you could be putting 46% alcohol down your throat because you think shooting it looks cool. And, really, if you want to enjoy Irish whiskey, I think it's preparing your palate, acknowledging what's in your glass, paying respect to it, getting to know it, and then figuring out what it likes. Does it like water? Does it not like water? And our goal really is to give people confidence around those things. And then they can go home, and if they like a cube of ice, add a cube of ice. It's really down to people's own palate.
How would you go about pairing whiskey with food? Are there rules with this as well?
Yeah, again, I think it's something very personal. We do food pairings on our tour because we sample 6 whiskies on the tour over 3 hours. So we don't want everything to taste end up tasting just like whiskey by the end of the tour. So we do want to do some pairings. And we also want to keep everybody upright by the end of the tour. So it is something that I've put a lot of thought into. I think prior to doing the tour, I would never have eaten food with whiskey, but that was just me. Now I've learned loads from doing the tour, as in I think pot still whiskey loves chocolate. It's the perfect accompaniment because we've all the lovely oil and chocolate complements the oil in the pot still whiskey, and something like, Redbreast 12 or Jameson Black Barrel, they double char the inside of bourbon casks to bring out all the butterscotch and caramel and toffee in the Jameson. And I've replaced brandy at the end of a meal. If I see a really good quality dark chocolate dessert and a Jameson Black Barrel, what an accompaniment. It's amazing. When I think about grain whiskey, it's quite sweet in general. So, cheese is a really great accompaniment to that. Or with the malts, which is more aggressive, we're often looking at a protein or something a little bit more salty to cut through that aggression. Now that's general. My general thoughts on it. It's kind of how I'll form the tour. Then when we talk to the pub, we see what's on the menu, and of course you need to, have a look. Sometimes the restaurant will come up with a mad pairing, and I'll go, oh, I'm not sure about that. Maybe with wine, but certainly, not with whiskey. So it definitely needs a bit of thought for sure. And I think another, great tip I got in Scotland when in the early days when I started drinking heated scotch, and I found it a bit overwhelming. The idea of drinking smoke kind of was like, oh God, no, I don't want that. But they were like, if you think about foods that you would usually eat smoked, so say a cheese or a meat or a fish, like salmon is a great one, and you have that non-smoked with your peated whiskey, you can kind of trick your brain. And it's all about, acquiring the taste. Like nobody turned 18 in Ireland and drank Guinness and whiskey and went, that's gorgeous. These are acquired flavors.
Right.
You earn them, and when you do, you're obsessed. So I think it's, again, it's fairly controversial one, but it's definitely something that's growing. If somebody wants an amazing food pairing distillery tour, the Powers Court Distillery out in Wicklow do an amazing food pairing tour at their distillery. It's one of my favorites.
Chocolate and whiskey, what a great idea to pair them together, because we just got back from Belgium, and, they have what they call pralines, which we know as bonbons. And some of the best places, they had Irish whiskey with their pralines, and it's such a perfect combination going together.
Yeah.
But I can imagine sitting there with a glass of Irish whiskey and a couple of nice pralines next to me, or just a piece of really good dark chocolate, and just having a grand old time, right?
And listen, you know what? Irish chocolate is another thing that it's on the up. Again, we are not known for chocolate, but again, because of the dairy. Like I know Butlers have been going forever. It was started by a woman in the 1930s, and it's still 100% family owned. It's an amazing chocolatier. But we've also got people like Two Sisters down in Wexford producing a single origin chocolate called Bean and Goose chocolate, and they're using Irish seaweed, spiced hazelnuts, sea salt, Irish honey. I use it a lot on the whiskey tour. So, people visiting and they're trying to think of what do we bring home, really great quality Irish chocolate and a lovely bottle of Irish whiskey. It's a difficult present to give away because you want it for yourself, but it's definitely, it's another good option.
Bring 2 bottles because you're going to want to keep one, I think is the moral of that story, Grainne.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, we're going to enjoy some Irish whiskey on your tour. And I think we've got to go to some pubs as well. We've talked about O'Donoghue's. We've talked about Gravedigger, I think was the name.
Yeah, the Gravediggers. Yeah, very good.
Do you have some other favorite pubs and maybe some pub etiquette for us?
Yeah, look, it's my favorite thing about Ireland is the pub, and it's such a cliche for a reason. I do want to point out that Irish people do not drink any more than anybody else in Europe. Okay, it's how we drink is a bit different, I think, and it's that that thing of we love talking about going to the pub and we love talking about having a drink. I don't think it means that we drink any more than anybody else. It's a bit like in the States, people have no problem talking about money. You know, in Ireland, we'd never talk about money. It's a bit like that with alcohol here. So I do want to put that in there. We have a terrible reputation for the drink, but I think it's really about the pub. And the pub, when I lived abroad, my mother used to ring me, and you know, Irish mothers, they'd ask you very leading questions. What do you miss most about home? Don't say the pub, is what she'd say, you know? And it definitely is. So the reason Irish pubs are so iconic is they all do different things. So we have Guinness pubs, whiskey pubs, storytelling pubs, Irish music pubs, Irish dancing pubs, talking pubs. The list goes on, and everybody needs to figure out what part of our culture they want to enjoy, and we tell them where to go. So the other important thing to note is that in Ireland, we don't sell culture. So our museums are free, our galleries are free, and the entertainment in the pubs at night time is free. And this notion of free culture comes from Celtic times when the most important attribute of a Gaelic chieftain was hospitality, and they had to symbolize their hospitality on their land. So they had to have a building that had a minimum of 4 doors. And once you entered the building, all the hospitality was free. So the food, the drinks, the entertainment. So the minimum of 4 doors represented the ease of access to the hospitality. And one of the High Kings of Ireland, the O'Neills, they were said to have 12 doors on theirs, just to prove how hospitable they were. So when you go into an Irish pub, most Irish pubs have multiple doors in them still today. And this is a throwback. I'm not sure that it's intentional, but it's certainly a throwback to this. And that is why we have free access to entertainment in the pubs. We are so privileged to have that. When I lived abroad, especially in the States, and you have a cover charge on the pub, on the bar, I'd be like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And I didn't understand that I was the privileged one, that we have such amazing access to a really high standard of entertainment for free. So that's the first thing. You need to figure out what part of the culture you're looking for. So somewhere like O'Donoghue's that you've already mentioned, the Cobblestone, Devitt's, the Stag's Head, all of these pubs are really famous for music. So it's that traditional Irish music. It's what you're imagining, the bodhrán, the fiddle, the uilleann pipes. They're really famous for that. Somewhere like Darky Kelly's, which has its own ghost. Why wouldn't you want to go there? Oh. It's the right amount of rowdy. It's really famous for the singing element. You know, we want to get into those folk songs that everybody's imagining. Storytelling then is another major thing. And we got a lot of storytelling troupes. So I'd encourage anyone to look out for Candlelit Tales, who travel around Ireland. They're sometimes in theatres, so sometimes you pay to go into the theatre. Absolutely do it. Sometimes they're in the pubs, but it's absolutely worth, doing a little Google search for where am I going to get that storytelling. And then talking. Talking is a national pastime in Ireland, and it's one of the countries where I think especially women traveling on their own, Ireland is one of the best countries for that. I've traveled a lot on my own, and I really only appreciated home when I left, that I can go into any pub, in the city, and go in for a bit of music, go in to read my book, go in for a little chat with somebody at the bar, sit up at the bar, put your phone away. You're going to end up in a conversation with somebody. That's a massive part of the culture. Conversation is an art form in Ireland, and it has to be allowed to be practiced. So pubs like Grogan's, I've seen them in Grogan's confiscate musical instruments at the door in case people had notions of playing music in the pub. It's hard conversation in here. It's also the artist pub of Dublin. So it's chock-a-block with contemporary Irish art. So it's, ripe for the picking. We've got literary pubs, whether that's the Palace, the Dame Tavern. So we've 4 Nobel laureates for literature out of Ireland. And, where did they influence each other? In the pubs. So that's it. It's absolutely, people say, if I could only do one thing in Dublin, what would it be? And I'd say, get some music in the pub. That's what you got to do. It's such an important part of the culture, and it's alive and it's thriving. That's the other important thing. And it's old and young people in the same space. That is what the feedback I'm getting. I'm almost immune to it now. And I can't believe the amount of people that say to me, Grania, old and young people sitting down together in the same space. You really don't get it to this extent anywhere else.
And it's an amazing experience because, like you said, you don't, this stereotype that everyone's drinking. You don't have to drink when you go into a pub. It's not a requirement, and not everyone is doing it. I've gone into pubs and had a tonic water and something and maybe something to eat, and nobody is judging you. But the other thing is, if you can't get into a conversation in Ireland, I don't know where you're going to be able to do it, because people just approach you, they're curious. They want to talk, and you will have the most fascinating, entertaining, funny, crazy, sometimes sad conversations with folks in a pub in Ireland. It's an experience unlike any other. And some of my richest travel experiences have been in pubs in Ireland.
100%. And I also say I get shocked sometimes at the amount of people that say to me, "Oh, we were out in the pubs last night, but they were all very full, so we didn't really go in." I'm like, lads, you gotta earn it. You gotta earn. You have to invest in the pub, and your investment is time and effort. So you elbow your way to the bar. You get your drinks. You stand up against a pillar or the wall, and you eyeball everybody in the pub. And eventually, like, body language is everything here. We communicate in all levels in Ireland. Somebody will give you a wink, and that means we've acknowledged you're looking for a seat. We're leaving after this one. They might take your coat and put it on the chair. I've never stood in a pub all night if I didn't want to. I've always gotten a seat within 10, 15 minutes, because it's very much a movable feast. You might be going into one pub with people after work and you're having a drink with them, and then you're heading up the road to meet your uncle, for an hour, and then you're finishing up in the pub with your friends, kind of thing. These things are very movable. Don't be afraid of all the people. Go in and invest in the pub. And places like I've mentioned it already, Grogan's, they're amazing. You go in, the minute you order your pint, they're scooching people up. They're saying, "Move up there now. There's loads of room for two more people in there." There's no such thing as personal space in Ireland, that's for sure. It's not for the faint-hearted, and you do have to understand this. Was you talked about etiquette there in the pub. There is a little cultural anomaly that you do need to be aware of. Like, the single most important thing to Irish people is the crack, and crack is not what it is in North America. Right. Crack is like mischief or fun. It's like, it's saying, the most common saying is, "What's the crack?" And it's like saying, "What's happening?" with a wink. So we're trying to figure out, is there any mischief in you? And how we might try and figure that out is we might insult you a little bit. So the more we insult you, the more we love you. So I might say to you, "Where did you get that sweater?" And you say, "Same place you got yours." I'm like, "Oh, there's a bit of crack in him." Whereas if you went, "Oh, no, do you not like it?" And we go, "Oh, that poor fella's very hapless over there. We better leave him alone. He's not going to be able for us." So the crack is really important, and you sort of need to be a little bit ready for that. So if somebody comes up to you and insults you a little bit, it means actually they want to get to know you. They're test driving you out a little bit to see, will you be able for the full conversation?
Well, I'm from Chicago, so I feel right at home,
Well, if you come to Ireland more than once, it means you're used to it and you're not afraid of us.
No, it's a place I often return to. We absolutely love it. Well, Grainne from Flavour Trails, it's been a delight talking to you. It's brought back my memories of Ireland, and you've shared so much interesting stuff about not only the food, but also the culture of Dublin and of Ireland that's so important for us to understand when we come and visit you. We'll have a link to your website in the show notes. It's flavortrails.ie. I suggest everyone go on one of your tours. You've got several of them to choose from. And thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been just a fantastic conversation. I loved it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real joy to be able to talk about all things Irish food. And you got to come join us on a tour next time you're in Dublin.
Okay, that's Granne Lawlor from Flavour Trails. You can book a tour at flavortrails.ie, and make sure you spell it like the Irish, FLAVOUR trails.ie. And this is true. I just bought our tickets to Ireland. Can't wait any longer. It's been 2 whole years since we've been to Ireland, so we're going to be heading there real soon. And if you'd like to hear more about Dublin from Grainne, I've got the full interview that includes her schooling me about my misconceptions about soda bread. You can get that by becoming a member of my Substack at destinationeatdrink.substack.com. Well, that's it for this week. Next week, it's a chili relleno taco in Seattle. Tacos with donuts and puffy tacos as we search for the best tacos. Don't miss that. Until then, get over to destinationeatdrink.com for more foodie travel fun. My new video is out. It's a food crawl in Valletta, the capital of Malta. It's an amazing island in the middle of the Mediterranean, and I try a delicious treat called a honey ring, plus some terrific Pakistani food, and watch a very, very loud cannon salute. You can see all that by clicking on the video tab at destinationeatdrink.com or go to my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@destinationeatdrink946. I also just published my latest foodie travel guide ebook. It's for my favorite city in Belgium, Ghent. They have some of the most amazing chocolate in the world, great beer, and so much more. I've compiled it all in the ebook, and you can get yours at buymeacoffee.com/destinationeatdrink or read an excerpt at destinationeatdrink.com/Ghent. Destination Eat Drink is distributed by the Radio Misfits Podcast Network and Ed Silla. Thanks, Ed. I'm Brent Peterson, and I'll see you down the road.
Join us next week for another culinary adventure on Destination Eat Drink, a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.